There is another storyline playing out, and that is about elections coming up in May. The governor and Secretary of State say they'll go forward, but a former Secretary of State and a current state senator says she doesn't think that's a good idea. Here's Senator Ruth Johnson. Senator, as we begin this morning, I want to review a little bit for the folks that are watching at home some of what your work history has been. You served in the State House, you were a county clerk, you were the Secretary of State, you're now in the Senate. So you're talking about an election coming up on May 5th, and you've seen elections from both sides, from administering them and running for office. So I know you've sent a letter to both the Secretary of State and the governor with concerns. Tell me what your concerns are and what your solutions might be.
Sure. With my background, as well as I am the chair in the Senate of Elections, it's very important to me that we make sure every voice gets heard. We make sure we have elections with integrity. And right now, it's ironic, or I think hypocritical, that the Secretary of State has closed every single meeting down, even one-on-one, to do any of their work until the 14th, until the peak of the pandemic is supposed to have passed, according to the governor. But at the same time, she's making 200 clerks and all their workers, their election workers, which are just truly patriots that work for stipends 2 or 3 times a year, to come in and have a super precinct, one precinct, that's all they can get enough staff for, to work the elections. We know what happened in Chicago when they had election recently. We've had a death and people that have been infected. We know in Wisconsin, where we are patterning after Wisconsin, where you have the one super precinct, and heavily encourage people to vote absentee. They simply had a lot of problems. We know that mail delivery is slowed up substantially. And we have 8 times more COVID in Michigan than they did Wisconsin. And if you look up Wisconsin, you can see the problems. Voters were disenfranchised. Voters were forced to come to the polls and stand in long lines because of these super precincts. It's just not fair. And not moving the May election to the regular August election, it really disenfranchises voters, and it puts people's lives at risk, especially our workers that are average age 72. They're truly patriots, and we owe those folks, and we owe the voters to be able to vote in a system that we know that is safe as can be. And really, at the peak of a pandemic in Michigan, when we can easily move those May elections to August, it really doesn't make sense.
And what would your remedy be when we look at this election coming up in early May?
It's so simple. It's so easy. It will save lives. It will make sure everybody gets a chance to vote. Wisconsin pushed absentee like we are, and so did Chicago. But people came and stood in line and got sick. And in Chicago, we know there's been death because of it. And Michigan is the 3rd worst state in the country for deaths. So simply you move the May election to August so everyone's voice can be heard. It is so important for democracy that we don't say, if you forget to vote absentee, you're going to have to go stand in line and put your life at risk. It's wrong for our workers. Even the absentee workers have to work in an assembly line style, and it puts their lives at risk, and their average age is 72. So you simply move to August when we have enough personal protection equipment, rather than taking it away from doctors, nurses, and our first responders. We make sure we have protocols put in place. We know that this virus lives on the mail for up to 24 hours. I sequester all my mail for 24 hours before I even open it. We don't have protocols like that put in place. The state has not purchased or given our clerks or our precinct workers, and by the way, we have 1,635 clerks and 30,000 patriots that work a couple times a year, average age 72, high risk. We need to make sure they're protected. We need to make sure people aren't afraid to vote. We're really disenfranchising voters by not simply moving to the August election, when we do have enough personal protection equipment for the workers, when we do have protocols that will make sure that we protect both the workers, the absentee ballot counting board, and our voters. This is so important.
A protest, a plan, an objection to that plan, and some who think an election should be postponed. That was just part of this past week covering the coronavirus.